Hey, welcome back to Barry T's Garage. I'm Barry T, and today we are thinking about our old cars compared to the new cars and all the emissions times in between. And I say this because we seem to be at a very unusual place in our country right now where kind of the trajectory of things related to pollution and requirements are being reevaluated. Where do we land? What do we do? What do us car people think about that? So come on along. We're going to investigate that a little bit, and I'd really love to see your opinions. Please make your comments and let me know what you think. Maybe we will send a message to the administration. Okay. See you. Thanks for joining me. I'm here with Will Violett at Five Star Engines.
Yes.
Will, tell me, what do you think if the EPA was going to roll back emissions? Where would you go? Where would you land?
I'd like to say I'd go back to the 90s, mainly because that's where I grew up, where I learned how to work on cars. A little bit simpler time. Electronics were a little bit less integrated, but you could still troubleshoot stuff fairly easy. Not to say nowadays that you can't do that, because there's lots of resources available online and wiring diagrams and stuff like that, but it's a little bit more intense. So you're paying for diagnostic time nowadays, like you were back in the day, but I think it was a little bit easier to troubleshoot and do emission stuff in the 90s. You know what I mean?
What do you think about, were the cars clean enough, do you think, in the 90s?
I mean, they were clean enough for those regulations. Nowadays, I'm sure you can make them with that equipment. You could probably make them just as efficient. I mean, not nearly as efficient as some of these 20, 30 miles a gallon trucks, but I think they would do just fine for what they are, especially some of these guys that don't use them that often.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about how long cars would last if they were able to make them to that?
Well, let's just say this. I drive a 79 GMC, and it's still on the road. I'm able to keep it on the road fairly easy. Is it as efficient as those ones? Definitely not, but they did make them different back then. I don't think cars nowadays are built quite to the standards.
How many catastrophic failures are there possible on your truck that would be more than a $5,000 or $6,000 repair?
Not too many, that's for sure. Yeah, I can't imagine anything over $3,000 or $4,000 on that truck, if that. You know what I mean? That's on the very, very high side. Everything on that truck's very readily available. Parts are there still. I mean, given it is a popular design and truck, but nowadays, like, body control modules and transmissions and stuff like that are just way too complicated, intricate, I should say, to not cost that much. I'm
here with Joe Abbin. What was the golden age for emissions? What do you think was the best balance of cost per cleanliness, put it that way?
That we can make horsepower and have a clean car too that gets good mileage. So
right.
I say we've come a long way. Just got back from the Grand National Roadster Show, and it used to be when you'd leave the fairgrounds, you couldn't see the mountains outside of Pomona there. You can see them now. So I say we've come a long way, and I'd hate to say that we're done, but we've come, it seems like the old 90-10 rule, you have to spend 90% more money to get that 10% improvement. We seem to be in a happy place right now.
This pretty new car would be somewhat intimidating to resolve problems.
It is, and most of the fellows I know, street rodders and even professional mechanics, are intimidated.
You definitely need a computer helper nowadays.
Yeah, and of course that's one of the things, part of the complexity is gratuitous complexity in some cases with the computer, but yet the computer, the engine will try to tell you what's wrong with it. So there you got that makes that actually offsets part of that.
With my friend Chris Tasev. Chris, first of all, real quick, give me your background. How long have you been working on cars?
Yeah, actually, even before high school, I would just tinker around with projects.
And now you have your own shop, of course. Where you work on. What is the range of vehicles, both in age and makes, that you work on?
Well, as old as I can, my clients have. I just got a 68 Camaro. That's the one I had a while back. It came back. So I'm doing a HEI conversion on that. Up to my newest vehicle that I worked on was a 2022 Land Rover Range Rover. We ended up doing some brakes, premature failure on the brake pads on that. Pretty much anything my client has, or I'm all word of mouth. So if I got a client or a friend or a neighbor that brings something over, we'll we'll have at it.
So you literally
how it
see
goes.
a little bit of everything or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
It was the happy spot where cars were easy to fix and pretty clean and all those things. What's the happy spot?
Well, see, so I think we started to see a lot of improvement with fuel injection, obviously, and you know, we had chute and port injection, which was great for fuel economy, or getting better with fuel economy, but horrible for performance. And of course, as we've gone up, you know, up to the, like everybody's got an LS, that's great. And if we, you know, we really take a look at those LS, I mean, how efficient is that? You've got horsepower, you've got really decent emissions and dependability, and easy to fix, and parts are everywhere.
Yeah.
So I guess if I had to put a range on it, give or take, right? I mean,
give or take.
I'd say probably from 2000 to about 2015.
Okay.
We saw a lot of good stuff come from a lot of different manufacturers. Dependability, gas mileage, emissions control, all that stuff seemed to just be good.
Yeah.
And most people were getting out of some cars, I mean, 150, 200, 250. I've had some people come over with a car that's got almost 300,000 miles on it and still going.
Yeah.
And I have seen some of the late model stuff, a year or two old, a couple of years old. They're starting to fail. These, again, the twin turbo V6s and 10-speed transmissions. And
yeah.
So, and it's most of the time they're out of warranty, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Barry, welcome.
Thank you. You know, we've been talking about the idea of changing emissions standards here in the U.S., and I don't know exactly what their plans are, but it brings the question, what if you could be in charge, what would you do? What do you think the golden age of performance, cost, efficiency, you know, where's that magic spot?
Everybody you ask probably has a different version of that.
Uh-huh.
I probably tend to think in the dawn of the fuel injection age, so late 80s, early 90s would be my starting point. I don't think I'd want to go back much further from that. I think the advent of electronic fuel injection, electronically controlled ignition systems really improved performance, and I think reduced emissions. The better a business is run or a production facility is run, the more efficient and the cheaper it can be operated. And I think cars are a lot that way.
We kind of learned that, hey, good gas mileage and good power and low pollution all happen at the same time.
Yeah, and that's probably a better way to say what I was trying to say, is I think they all kind of go together. The more efficient the engine is, typically the less pollutants, the better power, and more fuel efficiency. So I think they do go hand in hand. I think, you know, where we are today, it's hard to imagine cars and trucks that perform any better. I mean, in history, I think the horsepower numbers, the torque numbers, the fuel economy numbers, it'd be hard to argue that they've ever been better than they are today.
Right.
So the new vehicles are, in my opinion, fun to drive, pretty economical to operate. You know, I'm standing by my truck here. It's a 6.7 Power Stroke diesel. Easily gets 20 miles a gallon on the highway, running 75 or 80, depending on what the speed limits are.
Yeah.
1,050 foot-pounds, 475 horsepower. I mean, it's a pulling machine.
Wow.
And pretty clean. You know, I think maybe, you know, it's hard to even talk about that you can go too far on emissions controls when you think about the environment and the impacts, both the air and water, our health, kids' health. But at some point, I think, you know, how far can you go, and how much is it cost, right? There's always got to be a balance. What is the benefit? What's the cost? Not just the financial cost, but there's an environmental impact to producing the exotic metals that are in some of these catalytic converters, and mining some of the exotic metals, the electricity, the energy it takes to actually produce these emissions. I mean, there's a balance between what you really are getting at some point and what maybe makes economic and environmental sense. So I'd say, you know, I wouldn't want to trade off anything performance-wise or economy-wise today. I think it's as good or better than it's ever been. But I would think maybe there's a good time to relook at what we're actually spending and the economic impacts and the environmental impacts to get the results we're getting today in emissions control. Late 80s, early 90s to present day, somewhere in there is maybe the right balance. I think going back to, I'm going to say 40s, 50s, 60s technologies is not where I would like to be.
Right.
But maybe some balance in between.
Yeah.
The 2000s time period would be where I would be looking at emissions.
Right. Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Thanks, Barry. See you next time.
Yeah. You guys don't know when Ed's going to be working pretty hard. He's on trying to get work done. He's busy. Okay, maybe there are options. I think for the longest time we've just been fed, we have to do this next, then this next, then this next. And I'm thinking, is there a possibility that there's kind of a happy medium? And I guess what I'm talking about is, a lot of times it feels like we are just having to always do the next incremental thing, even if it's a lot of expense and possibly possibility of cars getting less reliable, more prone to breakdowns, and we're improving the emission situation by marginal 0.1% or something like that. So very marginal improvement from where we are, because we've come a long way. And all of a sudden it's just this little bits of things, and we're supposed to do it no matter what, how much it costs on each car and what the complexity does to long-term reliability. Don't mean to drone on too long, but you get the idea. Just how long do we have to do emissions tests when a lot of cars are not on the road after a certain number of years? There's only a few of what you might call classic cars on the road. So why are we hassling, a few hundred cars that are so many years old when it's not a significant thing? It's just not significant. So the question is, where's the stopping point? Where's the stopping point? And we've never even had the idea to have a conversation about it. Is there a stopping point? No, there's never a stopping point. It always has to be more, no matter what. And I'm not sure that's really the best thing. Maybe wait for some real technology improvements to happen first, and then move forward. Let the research and development happen, and leave it at that. Start stop. There's one thing for you. I had a rental car once. I believe it was a Nissan. I don't know for sure what it was, but I remember finding this display where it said, hey, congratulations, you've driven 5,000 miles with your start stop engaged, and you've now saved half a gallon of fuel. Really? That hassle of you come to a stop sign and just when you want to go, the engine stops and then you go start up again? I hate that. We used to hate carburetors that weren't set up right, and they would, fall on their face when you just put on the gas, bad accelerator pump or something. Now we're baking it in. So that's one thing. The other thing is just cost of repair. These cars, it doesn't take a transmission or an engine now to cause you to have to pay thousands of dollars sometimes to repair something. It's just crazy. Whereas the older cars, the only way you'd have a catastrophic, let's call it, a big event, that'd be either the engine or the transmission that would be the end of the repair world for a car. The various modules and systems, I don't even know what happens to your starter. Water pumps hidden in the block, or starters inside the engine block somewhere, and they're packing all these things in, trying to keep them away from the turbos. I know I'm ranting a little bit, but they're putting so much stress on these. They're struggling, and they're not as reliable as they used to be, as cars used to be. If you think back in time, when did it seem like we were kind of at a happy medium where cars were pretty clean, pretty reliable, pretty easy to work on, and we were kind of not too expensive? There's always costs, but not too much cost. Pretty good gas mileage. Where does that all land? I'm thinking about when the Honda CVCC system engine came out. It's like, wow, Honda figured out how to make a very clean and efficient little engine just by the design of it, not artificial external components and systems that are expensive and difficult and cut down the power and all that. So what could be done today with our today's technology just to make engines find their happy place of really clean and efficient, but not burdened with so much complexity and so much expense? That complexity, the expense happens when you buy the car, the expense happens when you have to repair or even just diagnose the car can be incredibly difficult sometimes. And then the expense of actually repairing it once you figured it out. I mean, I don't know. I just don't think we're at the very best place right now, and I want your opinion. So tell me what you think. Should we just keep putting the pressure on cars to cost ever more a percentage of the average salary? Or what was the happy spot? If we were able to turn back in time, what was the happy spot when we were actually doing very well in finding that happy medium? What is that? How do we figure that out? So there's your rant. Thanks for listening and watching. Thanks for being with me on BarryTsGarage. It's awesome. Really awesome. Thank you.